Coming up on this week's show, we look at a long-lost Atari Jaguar game,
a sexy black metal new NES,
and we chat to Imagine legend John Gibson.
Hello and welcome to the Retro Hour podcast, episode number 215, your weekly dose of retro gaming and technology news with me, Dan Wood.
Me, Ravi Abbott.
and me, Joe Fox.
And welcome to this week's podcast. Now, this is a show for you if you remember sitting there waiting for your Commodore 64 game to load, maybe going to have tea and a cup of tea while it actually loaded up, or maybe you remember blowing into a cartridge. If you've ever done that, this is a podcast for you. Every week, we reminisce about the golden age of video games and bring you a special guest who was involved in the making of them most weeks as well. Now, today we're going to be joined by someone who pretty much everyone we've spoken to about this chap always says one word: legend.
Absolute legend, yeah. We managed to talk to John Gibson and we contacted him directly from Thailand, actually, which was pretty awesome. First guest we've done from Thailand. And John is an absolute legend. He basically was the lead programmer for Imagine Software.
Yeah.
You know, one of the biggest software houses in the UK. And they created, of course, the legendary Bandersnatch.
I never created it. Tried to, yeah.
Well, we'll find out if they did or not and how it was kind of used in the future. But also, you remember the documentary with Imagine.
Oh, commercial breaks?
Yeah, that was fantastic. And that was all about how the kind of bankruptcy happened at Imagine and the bailiffs came in. Well, we've got some great tales of kind of the pranks that happened in the office, but also how they managed to retrieve the source code from the place whilst the bailiffs were there and quickly escape. So fantastic stories with John this week.
Now, because Imagine, we've done shows about Imagine before, and actually we interviewed Ian Grieve from Signosis the other week as well, who worked with John in the past. And really, they were the epitome of live fast, die young, weren't they, Imagine?
Totally. Fast cars, lots of bling, helicopters, madness.
Yeah, then spectacularly went bankrupt on a documentary that was being filmed by the BBC at the time. Ocean actually bought the remnants of Imagine Software, but it really was, I mean, for kind of the early British video game industry, I think a lot of lessons were learned from Imagine. And John, he was right there in the middle of it all. And I think if you watch that documentary, they refer to him as like Grandad in the documentary because he was like the only guy there over 30 or something. So,
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like such an interesting watch.
And surprisingly, he's never seen Black Mirror as well. So
Right.
he's never seen Bandersnatch. And, you know, we go into stuff about Denton Designs as well,
Yep.
which was the kind of company that came from Imagine afterwards.
Now, like you said, he lives in Thailand these days. So you actually recorded this one on your own at home.
Yeah.
Because it was like, 7 in the morning or something when you
Yeah,
did
the
it?
time difference is crazy, so I had to get up early and be sharp and on it for the interview.
Yeah, so Ravi's chat with John Gibson, which I've never heard him talk about those days before, you know, on video or podcast. So bit of a first, actually.
I've seen some text interviews with him, but I haven't heard him on a podcast before. So touch wood with the first.
Really, well, even because I've not heard this yet, so I'm going to be a listener to this one. I'm going to enjoy it. So John Gibson is coming up on the show talking about Imagine and lots more as well in around 20 minutes from now. Now, you did mention then that, you know, you had to record this at home because we couldn't get in the studio that time in the morning. Now, we did talk about this on last week's podcast, the fact that we don't actually own the studio, we're limited with the amount of time we can get in here each week, and the future of it isn't guaranteed. So we asked for your help to essentially set up a dedicated Retro Hour studio. And can I just say, we're blown away by your support so far.
You know, the response has been absolutely amazing. We've both got patrons. I've got 12 patrons.
I've got 4, I think.
You've got 4, so they've not done very well. But this is absolutely astonishing. Thanks so much, guys, for your supports, for your tweets. And, you know, a lot of people said this is a great idea. And we're really pleased that you guys have liked the idea because it took us quite a while to come up with this one.
4 years, I think, yeah. We were a bit nervous about doing it, weren't we?
Yeah, we were really, really nervous about it, and Dan was really worried it was just going to like fall on its face straight away. Because you do sometimes worry like you're just kind of like begging it a little bit. But
I know what you mean.
We are really, really, really thankful and really, really grateful that people have actually gone, yeah, you know what, we'll support them and stuff. So it's been absolutely amazing to see it.
I didn't think people liked us that much.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
And also it means we can, you know, maintain this quality for the future. So you guys are assuring that the show is going to continue in a high quality.
Yes, if you'd like to help us with our goal of building our studio, we're, you know, well on our way there. We're not quite there at that stage we can afford it every month at the moment, but, you know, if you'd like to back us on Patreon, we have got some exclusive rewards on there as well. Now, in the next week or so, you're going to get your first episode of our second podcast, the Retro Hour After Hours, which is going to be a little preview of a documentary that we've been working on recently, all about The Importance of Preserving Video Game History. Now, it's around 20 minutes long, this little documentary that we've been working on. Not only will you get to hear it before anybody else, but also another great advantage of putting it out to our Patreon backers is we can get your feedback on it as well. So we really would appreciate any feedback you've got on it too. So if you want to check that out, I mean, there are plenty more perks as well, including, you may have noticed if you are a backer, you got this week's episode a little bit early. Now, I can't promise that we'll do that every week. I'll be honest, there are some weeks where we're in here at like 10 p.m. on Thursday night, recording an episode that's going to be released at midnight. But where we can, we'll put it out a little bit early for our Patreon backers too. Plus plenty more perks for supporting us in our goal of building this studio. If you want to find out all of them and how you do it, it's all on the front page of our website at theretrohour.com.
And another thing that I just wanted to mention as well, you guys are not going to miss out on the advertising deals. I've had a few people say, oh, I'm a patron, I've got the ad-free version. Am I going to miss out on the cheap retro gaming deals? No, just check on the show notes and all the links will be in there. If you click them, they're affiliate links for us as well.
Absolutely. We've got some big news this week as well. Now, obviously, we're well into preserving the history of video games. One of the reasons we do this show is to make sure that these stories last forever and we get them documented. But there is something new now. This is called VHS. I love the name as well.
So America has it very locked up when it comes to like video game preservation and heritage. You know, the home of Silicon Valley, they've got the Computer History Museum. They really know what they're doing. Where in the UK, we've got a lot of museums, organisations, libraries, collectors, guys like us that love video games as well. So a network has been launched by the National Video Game Museum. You know, our friends that were previously in Nottingham and they've just moved to Sheffield now. And this is a really exciting incentive. We're members of this as well. And, you know, the Science Museum are involved, Bath Spa University.
BFI.
Yeah, the British Library, the British Film Institute, Cambridge Computer Museum as well. So this is going to be a big network, and the whole aim of it is going to be to kind of share each other's resources and work out the best practice and the best way of preserving these games. Because, you know, it's gone, especially with computer heritage in Britain, it's gone so quickly. And, you know, other systems come in and stuff, and will they dominate the conversation? Has stuff been missed? Has stuff been put to the wayside? So, you know, I think this is a really important thing for video game heritage, but also for British heritage.
And it's called Video Game Heritage Society, so VHS, which I love the initials on that anyway. But I think it's a great idea because, I mean, we've been actually looking into this, you know, kind of outside of this recently, the preservation aspect of things. And because the industry is still so young, it's only like just over 40, 45 years old, really, people really saw how they had to preserve books and movies and that kind of thing. But I think really it actually came quite late in the day with video games. It only seems to be in the last like 10, 15 years that people have actually thought, actually, we should be saving this stuff for future generations. And it's kind of like, you know, I was thinking about this the other day. We can still read a book from like 100 years ago. You can watch a movie from 50 years ago, but often you can't play a game that was only out 15 years ago because it's, you know, maybe the source code's gone, the server's gone. There needs to be an effort to preserve it.
It's not in the libraries, or it's not stored correctly. And, you know, I think there's been a movement recently to actually look at the spaces that these games are being played and created. So the Oliver twins, they had their bedroom that was recreated in the gallery, which is just absolutely fantastic because kids would not have experienced the old CRT TVs, teletext.
Seen a 70s bedroom even. Yeah,
stuff like that.
And I think, you know, that's another important point, preserving the stories and the people behind these as well, which is something we've always wanted to do. So it's great that we are, you know, founding members of the VHS, and I'm sure there'll be events coming up over the next year or so. We'll, of course, keep you up to date with that on the podcast. Now, let's get into this week's news stories before we chat to John Gibson. You were very excited about this one. A black metal analog MT.
Yeah, so we know the analog MT is like the prime recreation of the NES. You know, it's absolutely beautiful. It plays like 99.9% of the games very accurately. Well, they've created this limited edition NT Mini Noir console.
So it's jet black.
Yeah.
And it's shiny.
Oh, yes, but they've improved the cartridge slots, updated the interface, but they've also got gold-plated IOs. which is fantastic.
Now, there's this article here with a picture of it on Gear Patrol. I love the fact that now saying there's no need to hide it when the guests come over now. Because it actually looks like something that you would be proud to have on your TV.
It looks like a new piece of technology.
Yeah.
Like it's some sort of like, oh, what's that? Is that your like digital set-top box? So like, you know what I mean?
Oh,
like
you're fancy.
Streaming or something. You're like, no, it's my Nintendo.
But I can play Duck Hunt in 8K.
Yeah.
It looks like the PlayStation 5 prototype.
Yeah, it does,
doesn't it? Yeah.
No kidding, actually. So at the moment, these are limited edition. So these are going to be, I mean, like anything like this, they're going to end up being collector's items, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you can order them now, apparently. So I think that's really cool. I mean, I haven't got an Analog NT, but I know Analog, obviously, they did a lot of different systems over the years. We had the Mega Drive recreation, a company that have actually got a really good reputation for recreating these classic systems with a lot of love and attention as well. And apparently, they play them really well from everything I've read about them. So it's cool that they do stuff like that just for the fans, something that's a little bit different as a thank you, I think. Now, the Atari Jaguar is another system that I'm a big fan of. And I always love finding out about unreleased games because, I mean, as a Jaguar collector, it's a bit of a blessing and a curse. So I often look through, say, lists of games that were going to be released on the Jag. And then you kind of get after about late 1994, early 1995, and it's a list that generally says cancelled, 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 cancelled. Everything that was meant to come out on it just got thrown on the shelf. But over the last couple of decades, we've seen a lot of games that were maybe actually quite close to completion. Either the source code gets released or people make videos about them or the developers that worked on them kind of talk about them and give a bit of information on them. So there's been a bit of news this week then about another long-lost Atari Jaguar game.
Yeah, so this title was for the Jag, and it was a kind of cyberpunk roleplay game.
Right.
But it was really using the Jag's hardware, really pushing the kind of video on it and the capabilities and stuff like motion capture and digitizing people as well. But it seemed massively late on in the kind of game.
I was going to say, it does actually look like, a half-decent PS1 game.
Right.
Which you can't say about many Jaguar games, in my opinion.
No.
So how late are we talking here?
It was kind of 1994.
Yeah.
They were saying. But, a lot of filming got done for it. And it was by a company called Black Ice, and it was going to be called White Noise as well.
These guys, there's a picture in this article of the Black Ice White Noise team posing in front of the Batmobile outside Atari's headquarters. And these guys look like they could have been in like a mid-90s hip hop group or
they
something.
They look like something out of The Crow.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
All kind of like Michael Jackson as well.
Yeah.
Do you want to play the sample of it, Dan?
All I know is, when I'm finished here at the end of the day, I'm supposed to be able to leave, and I can't. I can't get out of here.
There's something very Night Trap about the...
Yeah.
He sounds like Ren from Ren and Stimpy.
So, as you can tell, it did have that bad 90s FMV kind of acting and voiceover, but it was going to be a full open-world adventure title, explore an entire city, have different inhabitants that you could interact with, and this is ages before GTA 3 as well, so really interesting, but it seems that the Atari executives never really got it, and went out and spent most of the money on drinking. So check out this article, and it's got lots of details about the full story of this crazy game.
It looks good. I mean, there is some gameplay footage of it in here as well. Like you said, it's kind of that 3D kind of open world third-person game where you can walk around.
It's like a mix of a PS1 and a Sega CD game.
Yeah. Yes,
like
with
that,
the FMV bits.
Yeah, that's what it kind of feels like to me looking at it.
Well, it was on the cusp between those systems, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Which makes sense. And I mean, there are games on the Jag that there's Highlander is on the Jaguar, and that is it's a terrible game because the fighting mechanics are really difficult to grasp.
I want to play it now.
I think AVGN did a video about it a couple of years ago.
Oh, did he?
It was one where they sit down. I've got a feeling it might be a Jaguar CD game, actually.
Oh, okay.
So he sits down, he plays it, and there's only like 8 games or something on the Jaguar CD. So, but yeah, I mean, the concepts of it were there, though. They're kind of walking around the exploration where you could walk around this world. So you see the Jaguar could actually handle that quite well. And this game actually looks a hell of a lot better than Highlander did, for example. So the fact they've got it in a video here, I wonder if there's going to be a way to play that then. So it looks like
there's a few bits. I think they say they've got the alpha version.
Right, okay.
And there's a few bits of kind of walking in and out of the buildings and stuff like that.
Cool. Well, I'll keep an eye on that because I've got a Jaguar CD. One of the few that have got a working CD.
One of the 7
yeah,
that still work.
Probably not many of them out there. Like, I'm always excited for new games to play, and it being that I haven't got very many. There's some good homebrew stuff that's come out in the Jag in recent years, but getting like a game of that kind of level, where that kind of level of production went into it, I think it's going to be really interesting to see. So.
Yeah, because I think a lot of Jaguar games they choose the easy route.
Yeah,
and maybe this one was directly hitting the hardware and using both processors.
Even like FMV with actual actors in, I don't think I've actually seen that in a Jag game before. So the fact that it could do that is pretty cool, I think. So if you want to check out that video, I'll put it in our show notes along with everything else we talked about at theretrohour.com. Now, at the moment, there's a little system here called the RG350. Another one of these kind of handheld retro systems. So this one looks pretty good, though. This kind of reminds me a bit of like the Switch Lite, but compressed a little bit.
Yeah, and it's a little bit more powerful than the other ones, and that makes it good because you get really good performance for PlayStation games,
right?
Which it's always been a bit hard to kind of get nice performance on something that's not a Sony PlayStation product. The Pocket Go was one that we covered previously that was a little bit cheaper than this device, but it seems quite a nice handheld. I like the inclusion of 2 thumbsticks as well as
I was
the
literally
D-pad.
just thinking about that, how it's got the twin thumbsticks. And not many of these do actually have that. And then they're like, oh yeah, it's PS1 games. And you're just like,
yeah,
how? But yeah, no, it's got like a slightly nicer build quality from the look of it, from a few that we've kind of covered in the past.
Yeah, because they were saying the Pocket Go thumbsticks were too short and they didn't. They were useless pretty much, but these thumbsticks are almost perfect according to this article.
What kind of systems can it emulate then? I mean, it looks like there's PlayStation games and stuff on it as well.
Pretty much you'll be able to do like, maybe Dreamcast will be a bit laggy,
right.
But you'll be able to do your N64, your PlayStation, all the kind of stuff that you could do on one of these like Raspberry Pi portable handheld devices. That's
good though, because I haven't actually got any of these kind of recent handhelds. Mainly for the reason that I don't see them out and about. I think if I walked into like Game and saw one of those for like 40, 50 quid, I'd be tempted to pick one up. But I've got my Switch, which I generally use. But obviously, you can't get all your old ROMs and stuff on there. I think I would like one of these machines where you can maybe put like maybe all your Lynx games and all your Game Gear games and that kind of thing. That'd be quite a cool little handheld, I think, to take around.
Yeah, and it's saying, it feels a bit more expensive, this one, but also it can run up to 8 hours.
Yeah.
Which is very useful to have.
Yeah, and they've priced it at $74.
Yeah, which is not bad.
Isn't too bad.
Yeah, reasonable.
We've seen some for a lot more than that, and
it's kind of between the Switch and the Pocket Go, isn't it? Like
yeah,
that area.
Yeah.
I just think we're a bit spoiled when it comes to handhelds these days as well. I was playing my Lynx the other day again, playing. I used to call it Toki, but Toki, as they pronounce it. Yeah, I was playing that on it the other day, and it's a great version of it. Which I'll talk more about why I've been playing that in a minute. But just looking at that screen and stuff, I thought we've come a long way. That's one area of gaming where I think today we just kind of take it for granted.
You see, I got my Lynx like 12 years ago or something like that, 11 years ago. My wife bought it me for a birthday, and I remember thinking like, oh God, this is amazing, like I love it kind of thing. And I think maybe it's just, once again, it's like rose-coloured glasses kind of thing. But yeah, isn't it amazing how far we have come with these things?
Like, in fact, you get one of these for like $70 now.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything on it's awesome. So yeah, keep them coming. We do love checking out these stories. Now, a friend of ours, Ravi, Adam, recently made me very jealous. Talking about Atari, he dropped me a little link the other day. He goes, you never guess what I've got? I've just got a new system. Only an Atari Falcon.
Oh, God.
I was like, I've always wanted one of those. They go for so much money now. The last Falcon I saw, I think, on eBay last month went for about £1,500.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I really want one because the Falcon Towers, you can add some fat Radeon cards in and just go absolutely mental. So I'd like to have a play with that at one point, but I can never afford those things.
Well, the Atari Falcon was, it was a very late Atari computer. And it was kind of like when they were developing the Jaguar and the ST was kind of phasing out. Wasn't on sale for very long. But one thing that the Falcon was actually, it was continued by an audio company who kept it going just because the Atari ST was standard in the audio industry. I mean, you look at stuff like, there's a video on YouTube of Fatboy Slim talking about, it's with Bose, I think, and he's talking about his home studio and that. In the background, there's still an Atari ST there that he uses in his productions now to get that gritty old school sound.
And he's running Funk Soul Brother on it as well.
He made all
on
those
the
tracks,
original Atari as well.
And Utah Saints, who we had on, I mean, they use EST for a lot of their tracks too. And Cubase, which obviously went on to be bigger on the Mac platform later on, something else that started on the ST. Now, there's an article here on Music Radar talking about that kind of early music production software.
Yeah, the digital audio workstations. DAWs, basically, yeah. And, you used to have sequencers and you used to have trackers, but the digital audio workstations were the ones where you really had the sequence in there, but you had the editor, you had absolutely everything. And those DAWs are basically leading on to stuff like Logic, Ableton Live. Now, the reason that we're talking about this is you think, this isn't a music podcast, but the ZX Spectrum Next is now a digital audio workstation, which is crazy. They've got 3 sound chips in the Spectrum Next, and they've released a program called NextDAW.
Right.
And you can basically use 9 channels now on the Next. You can sequence music, just hours and hours of fun. It's got 64 sound patches as well, a piano roll editor that you can use. You can change the arrangements, and I think this is going to add to the Spectrum music scene, and we're going to get some absolutely crazy compositions coming from this. There's a copy of Human League, Don't You Want Me Baby. Let's have a little listen. This is Human League.
So this is Don't You Want Me Baby by the Human League on the ZX Spectrum Next.
I love it already.
And you can hear the multiple channels there.
Everyone's head's nodding around the table.
I'm throwing up some gang signs, apparently.
No one to mess with you if you had this, Joe.
Oh, yeah, no.
You need this in your band.
But doesn't
I
it
do
sound
need this in my band.
Gritty.
Doesn't it sound like a lot more depth in the tune?
Here's a lot going on there. Yeah. This is like how many channels?
9.
9 channels, that's crazy. I need to get Norman Cook at the Spectrum Next.
Oh, yeah.
He'd do all
I
sorts
was
of
quite disappointed that it got turned off then.
I'll send you the link, Joe. You can play it at your own leisure.
Thank you very much.
But it's quite, I mean, the Next has only really been in the hands of fans for a couple of weeks. So
yeah, so great that this development software's out there.
I was reading the other day, someone was on about putting a SID chip in the Next, and everyone's like, sacrilege!
Yeah, I think there was talk of it. I think they originally were playing with some SID chips in there, and then there were some issues. We'll see.
Yeah, so that'd be awesome. So the more I hear about it, Nostalgia Nerd did a really good video. I don't know if you saw that. About a 50-minute video. All about the Next. I was watching it the night and I was like, why didn't I back that Kickstarter when it was out? I remember seeing it as well. I was like, yeah, hopefully they can do a second run. And I'm made my mind up, I'm getting one, 100%. Now, before we get into our chat this week with the legend that is John Gibson, let's talk about a game that I remember we last talked about in the podcast. I think when we had, was it Big Boy Barry? We had him on.
Yeah.
Now, we were talking about this game, and I remember playing this. It was one that you'd always see at the seaside that, you'd want to go on, but your mum wouldn't give you, I think it was about £3 or something, maybe even a £5 sometimes. It was Sega's G-Lock. Now, that was in that rotating arcade cabinet.
It's like a roller coaster.
It's
like the way that it strap you in.
It's like being in a washing machine.
Yeah.
So
it was one of those gyroscope things, wasn't it? And you were in the middle with a CRT TV.
Yep.
Strapped there. It's insane when you think about it now.
And after a day on the beach at Scarborough, after you've had candy floss and
ice cream,
donuts, and all mixed down with a milkshake, going on that afterwards generally wasn't the best idea. You'd be a bit green after it. But it was always, I remember, there'd be a crowd of people around it all the time watching it just because it was so cool. And that was when Sega were really the kings of the arcade back then. But obviously the game that was on it, it was G-Lock Air Battle. A lot of people think it was Afterburner on there, but it wasn't. It was this game called G-Lock that was made for it. Well, now, it turns out you're going to be able to play it at home.
Yeah, on your Switch. And I think this is cool because you can recreate it on an office chair.
Imagine if they did that Nintendo Labo with it.
That would be
And it came with a
cardboard.
ginormous cardboard kit, which is like the size of a car in your front room.
That needs to happen.
And you've
go
got
to
your
the
office
pleasure
chair in the
beach.
middle of it all.
Oh my god!
Go to the pleasure beach and go on the big one.
You strapped in with some cardboard straps over your shoulders.
Well, I mean, this is part of the Sega Ages series where they've been bringing out, stuff like Sonic 2, Puyo Puyo 2 has been out on there as well. But it seems a really weird choice of game for them to release because it seemed like a game that was so tied to the hardware.
Yeah, like, is it even that good? Is it just the hardware which we all remember? Like, because I've, obviously I'm aware of the G-Lock and stuff and got memories of it. I couldn't tell you a thing about the actual game.
Well, it's
Like,
weird as well because they haven't called it G-Lock Air Battle, which was the original. They've called it G-Lock R360.
Right, yeah.
As a-
Well,
as a
360
kind of-
was a machine.
Yeah. So maybe just to inspire that. Oh, I remember the R360,
I've got a feeling when you're playing it with your Switch and the analog control, it's not going to have, obviously, the same effect.
If your grand's playing, she'll do that anyway.
I mean, yeah, I guess if they ever bring out a virtual reality headset, imagine playing that in VR. Oh
throw
my
up.
god, yeah. I threw up playing VR games at the best of times. To get the real experience, you'd have to go and I don't advise anyone does this, go sit in the tumble dryer or something. Would you?
Yeah.
That would be the way to play. But what an interesting choice. I think it's cool, though, that they're actually bringing out games like this and not just the obvious titles that we've bought like a million times on every different console we bought over the last 20 years. More like this, I'd like to see, I think. Now, before we get into our chat with John Gibson, let's give a big thank you to our loyal supporters, the people who allow us to come in and record the Retro Hour podcast for you every single week and bring you incredible guests. And these are people who have either backed us on Patreon or made a one-off donation via our PayPal. You can find both of those on our website at theretrohour.com. And your help is hugely appreciated. Not only will you secure the future of this podcast, but also you will get a mention on the most prestigious high score table in the world of retro gaming, the Retro Hour Hall of Fame. Like this week, thank you, Gary Heather.
Christian Bradstreet.
Sean Clifton.
And the Civitas Universe, who all made donations into the running of the show. And you can do the same on our website at theretrohour.com. Now, this is a bit where every week we give a little shout out to other retro projects and communities and things that we've been playing this week. I want to give a big thank you to two podcasts that I've been on this week. I've been busy this week, boys.
You've been cheating.
I've been all over the place.
He's having an affair.
Well, first of all, I was on Arcade Perfect.
Oh, great podcast.
Which, again, that was why I was playing Toki, because we did, it was really funny. It was last Saturday night I recorded it, and the guys who do Arcade Podcast, they're based in Australia. So it was like 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, and I was there with a glass of wine. They're both having the morning coffee. A little bit out of whack in that regard, but yeah, it was such a good laugh doing it. And we were talking about Toki and comparing all the different versions that have come out over the years.
Oh, because they did a new remake as well, didn't they?
Yeah, so we started with the arcade version. We talked about the really weird Mega Drive port that was like no other version any other platform. The Lynx version, the Amiga version. Then we went into even stuff like the NES, the Commodore 64 version, and then talking about the latest version that came out on the Nintendo Switch. So that was a real laugh, actually. So if you want to check that out, I think it was nearly 2 hours long we did it. Probably don't listen to it around the kids, I'm just saying. So if you want to check it out, I'll put a link. And also the guys from Console Shock as well. We did an episode talking about Mac gaming.
Oh, wow.
Which is not something you hear about all that often, but it was about running like old 68K and PowerPC Mac games. So if you want maybe a different system to collect for, we'll give you a load of tips on collecting for the Mac and all these old school games as well. So if you want to check out either of those episodes I've been on over the last week, I'll put those in our show notes for you this week. What have you been checking out this week then?
An absolutely amazing site which is called replacementdocs.com, and basically it's scans of manuals.
Cool.
But gaming manuals. So there's absolutely everything here. You've got all the systems, Xbox 360, you've got Lynx, you've got classic Macintosh stuff, MSX stuff, N-Gage manuals.
Wow.
If you want to get manuals for your N-Gage games.
I need some of them.
Yeah. So it also helps for people who got games without manuals back in the days.
Yeah, like most of ours.
And maybe stuck at a certain point,
Yeah.
then you can actually see what's going on. So it's a great site, replacementdocs.com, and go to the download manuals section.
And The Simpsons Hit and Run, that was a favourite of yours.
Yeah, so we spoke about Simpsons Hit and Run potentially getting a remake
Yeah.
a couple of months ago, and you know, there's still been a few rumours flying about that. But somebody has gone out of their way, you know, a devoted fan, and made kind of like a tech demo of a potential kind of like Simpsons hit and run, but they've made it in it's the PlayStation 4 hit Dreams,
right,
which I'm not too familiar with, but from what I understand, it's like a development kit for the PlayStation 4.
Okay.
And somebody's like remade the first level of Simpsons hit and run in it, and it looks like it's kind of weird to like look at, but it's got like the game physics and stuff down in it,
right?
You know, and it's like in like a nice HD, but then it's quite blocky looking. But I just thought it'd be a cool little like, you know, check it out, kind of have a look at the video, have a look at the footage. I think it's pretty cool. And I'm really... Is that you playing that?
That's Ravi watching it.
It's Ravi watching it in the background. And, you know...
Copyright strike for the Simpsons music.
Yeah, maybe. But I'm still hopeful that the full remake's coming. But I just thought this was really cool that somebody out there loves it more than I do.
Yeah,
They've gone out of their way to remake it.
Me playing it.
I don't know where that's coming from.
But I think, you know, if the plans aren't going ahead to do an HD remake, this might kick them up the bum to be like, we need to do it,
exactly.
okay?
There's people out there.
I saw one the other day which was a zombie game, and it was waves of zombies coming. But
Yeah.
It was Simpsons Hit and Run, and it was waves of homers.
Oh, no,
That's
way.
amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah.
I know I'm having a nightmare about it
Yeah.
right now. Yeah, so better check out any of our community picks and all the stories we talked about this week. They'll all be in our show notes at theretrohour.com. Right then, I think it's time we went over to Thailand. A very early in the morning interview that Ravi did last week with Imagine legend John Gibson. Next on the Retro Hour podcast.
So you're listening to the Retro Hour, and I'm here with the legendary John Gibson. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing fine, I think. A bit hot, but yeah, I'm doing fine.
Well, we always ask a question of our guests first, and that is, what was your kind of first video game experience, or the first time you like experienced some interactivity?
Well, that would have been a long time ago, like 82 or something like that, when I bought myself a ZX81. Wrote my first game, which is called Fly in a Bottle. It was a little asterisk that was randomly moving around the screen, and you had some graphics that represented a bottle. You had to catch the fly in the bottle.
Nice.
It wasn't easy. Yeah.
Was that the machine you learnt to code on then?
When I got that, I tried writing some stuff in BASIC, and it was so bloody slow, it was unbelievable. So I had no choice but to learn Z80 assembler. So I guess that was the first game I wrote in Z80 assembler, yeah.
And was there like a instruction manual or a kind of a essential book that you used to learn that Z80 code?
Yeah, there was. I came across a book called How to Program Your ZX81 in Machine Code, and I guess that's how I learned it. I didn't have any like an editor or a compile anything like that. I had to write out the instructions in hex on a piece of paper and then type them into the machine in a REM statement, and then run it. And you couldn't save the game on ZX81; it was too unreliable. So every time I wanted to play it, I had to type it in again.
My gosh, but that kept it efficient, right? And that was why people wanted programmers in that way.
Yeah, I mean that's how I got my job at Imagine, because I was a machine code programmer, and they were a very rare breed in those days.
Well, how did you find out about Imagine? Like, did you have previous knowledge of the company?
No, well, I was doing an analyst programmer course in Liverpool. It was back in the day when the government tried to get retrained people with TOPS courses, they were called. I did this course, and I was about 35, and they said, you're a good programmer, John, but you'll never get a job because you're too old. Too old at 35, anyway. So I went for an interview for a job, a business machines company in Liverpool, and I was interviewed by Ian Hetherington, Ian Hetherington of Signosis. Yeah. And he said to me, well, I had long hair, an earring, and a beard then. I was a scruffy looking sod. And he said, well, I can't give you a job, but I know a man who can. And he sent me off to see David Lawson. And he said to me, can you program 16K machine code in a month? And I said, I don't know, I'll give you a word if you like. He said, okay, you got the job.
So was that kind of the basis of your job? If you didn't do that in a month, then you wouldn't have got it.
It turned out to be 6 weeks, actually, because I knew Z80, but I'd never been anywhere near a Spectrum before. And we had a development kit based on an Apple Euro 2E, that was it. So I had to learn how to use that as well. But anyway, I got the first one, all finished in 6 weeks. And the rest is history.
Wow, so yeah, you had to kind of learn these other machines because they would be porting to them as well. And did you find that really exciting, actually, kind of looking at these new machines like Apple?
Oh yeah. Well, as far as the Apple was concerned, it was just a development environment. So I didn't really have to learn much about that. But also I had to learn about the innards of the Spectrum. But the thing was, I was doing something I really, really enjoyed, and I was getting paid for it. So, that's the best sort of job you can get in the world, isn't it?
Well, also that place was like really buzzing at that time, Liverpool in the 80s, with the kind of staff around. And like you said, very young staff. How did you feel kind of being the older guy going into a very young space?
To be honest, I didn't really think anything of it, although they did used to call me Grandad, because they were in their 20s and I was in my mid-30s. But it was just a joke. It was great. It made me feel younger, I suppose, that's the thing. But actually, imagine there's 3 offices that just, as they got bigger and bigger, they moved to a bigger office, but they didn't bother to get rid of the one there before. But finally, they ended up on the Moorfield station, I think it was. Enormous, had 2 floors, enormous floors, and they just always looked half empty because there wasn't enough people to fill the space. But yeah, there was lots of hijinks. Like it was a marketing manager had an office, one of those glass partitioned office, and Eugene Evans crawled up into the ceiling and took a tire out and emptied the contents of a fire extinguisher on him. He wasn't very amused. But that was the sort of thing they got up to. It's crazy, really.
Were all the kind of separate teams then in separate offices or different departments?
Not really. I mean, there was a couple of guys, Steve Riding, and some other guy whose name I can't remember. They were tucked away somewhere doing a secret project for Atari. And I never did find out what that was. But the rest of us was in this big open plan office. And I say the rest of us to begin with. There was only 2 programmers, apart from Dave Lawson, Ian Witherburn and me, and then a couple of musicians, artists and so on. But it wasn't until Imagine got this contract with a magazine, the Dutch magazine, can't remember the name of it, but to produce a load of cover tapes for their magazine. That's when they started getting loads of programmers in.
So overnight it kind of changed.
I guess, yeah, by the end of 1983 it was really turning into something big.
Mola Moore was your first title, and it's kind of not one for people who hate dentists. What did you think when you first heard the concept of teeth pulling, and was it kind of based on games like Plaque Attack?
It wasn't based on anything, really. I mean, David Lawson said to me, well, go away and write the game. And I thought, what bloody game should I write? And I think he was having some dental treatment at the time. Maybe that's what made me think about it. And I just came to me, I suppose, the mouth opening and all the teeth going changing colour as they get more and more decayed. But I did get a letter from a Harley Street dentist saying that, I was trivialising tooth decay. And what the kids going to do? Well, I mean, I wanted to write back to him and say, sod off what you some people saw. But in the end, I wrote back and said, au contraire, I think, when they see the game and they see what can happen if they don't brush their teeth, they will brush their teeth.
Yeah, you would have thought that would be a great game for sponsorship from like Colgate or someone like that.
Yeah, surprised they didn't actually do it anyway. Maybe they didn't do sponsorship in those games, video games in those days.
Oh, it took 4 weeks to program that as well. Were the timelines and schedules, what were they like at Imagine?
It was very much a case of go away and write the game and come back when you finished. There's no milestones or any all sort of modern stuff where you sit down and plan it all out. With the game like Zoom, for example, there was a game design meeting that lasted about an hour when me and Eugene Evans and Dave Lawson sat in a room thinking up this game. Well, either David already thought it up, and he was scribbling things on the piece of paper. And when he'd finished scribbling, he said, well, go away and write that and come back when you finished it.
Well, that was a crazy impressive title as well, because there was so much happening on the screen at the time. That hub design, where did that kind of come from?
Again, I mean, in those days, I mean, my program was very empirical. Or my game design was. I didn't go away and read books or anything like that. Like people think I read a load of army strategy books for stonkers, but I didn't. It was all empirical. I thought, well, people want to see us the gameplay in small details. That was that die bar thing on Zoom as well. It just made the whole screen look really busy. It gave me more sense of panic.
Well, it was a fantastically successful title as well. It remained top 20 for about a year. Why do you think it was so successful?
Well, I think a lot of the games, Imagine's Arcadia was really successful because it was there weren't many titles around anyway, and there were very, very few titles that were sort of pacey, that made you want to manual dexterity games. You have to think quickly and act quickly, and there weren't many games like that around. And that's why Arcadia and Zoom are so successful.
Yeah, you're right. They had that real kind of arcade feel.
Yeah, that's it, yeah.
Well, you mentioned Stonkers there as well, and that was a fantastic war game. Did you have many influence off other titles, or, as you said, just kind of came up with it?
Well, really, I think the only influence I had was there was a game on the Apple called Eastern Front. And I just read an article about it, and they said that they did all their AI in the vertical interrupt routine. So, and that the limited amount of time there. So, what it boiled down to is the longer the player took moving their move, the more refined the computer's move to become, and that's why it was difficult to win, to be honest, because of that, because the computer could come up with some really horrible things to do.
Oh, that's awesome. So you had to get the pacing right of the kind of gameplay.
I mean, a lot of that was down to Steve Kane. You know, Steve Kane, he was an Imagine, started off as an Imagine artist, but he died at a very young age of lung cancer. But he sat down with the game and tuned all the variables, how fast things move, how much strength they got, and so on. And he played it for ages and ages, and he loved the game in the end. You know, even after he finished refining it, he just carried on playing it. And he actually found a way of getting around the crash bug, because it turned out to be when you went near the bridge, that was when it had a propensity to crash. But he found this way. If you approached the bridge from a certain direction, it was okay. But I never got a chance to try and fix that bug.
Well, the use of kind of real-time events in there was groundbreaking as well. You know, the ticker at the bottom kind of telling you what was going on. How did people react to that at the time?
Well, I remember Steve saying it really added to the game, because it added to the urgency, because you had messages coming across saying so and such and such a division is under attack, and then another one that said such and such a division is about to get wiped out. And you had to say, oh, Christ, what am I going to do next? Where do I go first? Who do I help out first? And then things like such and such a division is running out of supplies. They're running out of ammunition. And the whole thing made it urgent.
And that's kind of standard in real-time strategies now. You know, construction on this building is complete and all of that kind of stuff, you know.
I think it has been referred to as the first real-time strategy game. I'm not sure if it deserves that title, but it was at least one of the first, anyway.
Well, Frankie Goes to Hollywood was a very original title as well. How did the band kind of react to, you know, this game where you're going around Liverpool in the 80s?
Well, we never actually met the band. We met their manager, whose name escapes me. But what they did say through him was that if it was going to be a game of little Frankies running around, they weren't interested. You know, they didn't want them being like the monsters in a game, anything like that. But then Ali Noble, one of the Imagine artists, came up with Denton's artist, sorry, came up with this idea of using Frankie Goes to Hollywood's sort of philosophy, I suppose, with the sperm and the they had four things. I can't remember the details of it, but they had a philosophy, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and she thought up an idea of using the object of the game was to become a real person. You started off as a ghost, so to speak, and you had to collect all these bits and pieces to become, in Frankie Hollywood's way of putting it, a real person. And they loved that idea because there was none of the Frankie people in the game as such.
And I think it's quite cool that it came with a second tape of music as well, so you could kind of listen to relax and then like play that at the same time.
Yeah, that was David Wall of Ocean's idea to have that as an extra sort of thing.
Well, how much did kind of piracy affect Imagine? I know you used like Speed Lock 2 and a few of the copy protections, but it was rampant at the time, wasn't it?
Oh, it was, yeah. I mean, you could go around markets like car boot sales and stuff like that, and you'd find copies of games all over the place. In fact, it was that BBC Two program it started about Imagine, and then became a program about Ocean. Had David Ward wandering around markets showing all these tapes, and that's the trouble. Somebody bought a game and then copied it loads of times, and that's all money down the drain. I mean, it wasn't the reason why Imagine went down the tube, but down the pan. It couldn't have helped much. I've always been a sort of sell RV person. I mean, for me, writing the game was the important thing. Making money out of it was somebody else's job.
Yeah, and if it's popular, it's popular, isn't it?
yeah, correct. Yeah.
Well, Gallivant, Cosmos Police as well, was a kind of coin-op conversion. Trying to fit that on the Specky must have been a hard task. How did you decide on what to keep or what to strip out?
Well, I think in the end I stripped out most of it. Because I actually had an arcade machine. Ocean had one sort of sent to the flat I was living in at the time, so I could play the game in order to write it for the Spectrum. And the first time I played it, I thought, how am I going to put this on the Spectrum? It wasn't a particularly good conversion, to be honest, because of that very reason. But Ocean were quite happy. They didn't pay me lots of money, so I'm not complaining.
Also, kind of, Imagine we're known for like flashy cars as well, and you had a Porsche 902. What did you think? What did your friends think of it when you kind of pulled up in that, and they told them it was because of programming?
Well, yeah. I mean, a funny story was in a multi-car pile-up on the M5 when I was driving this Porsche. Nothing to do with me. Somebody stopped in front. I managed to stop before I hit the plate car in front of me, but the guy behind me didn't. Anyway, the police came along, and they said, "Is this your car?" I said, "No, it's a company car." I said, "Christ, what sort of company do you work for? They give you Porsches." I said, "I program games." Oh, he must have thought that every games company gave their Porsches away to their programmers.
Yeah, because it's legendary seeing all the pictures of like the old supercars and the Imagine crew.
Well, that was it, and that's really what led to the Imagine's demise. To a large extent, they had all this money and they just spent it for fun. Dave Rawson got himself an American Express card, would you believe, and went to a Ferrari dealer. So, I want to buy a Ferrari with an American Express card. Oh, that'll do nicely to you.
Well, they'd also proposed the Mega Game series, which was developing games to really crazy levels with a 128K RAM expansion. What did you think about when you first heard the Mega Game plan?
Well, I thought it was great because with all that extra memory or ROM, you could put loads of juicy graphics on it. The trouble was the artists went bananas and they used it all up in no time at all. By the time Imagine went bust, the game was in a state where it had to be started all over again. The official receiver said to me, "Is the game worth anything?" And I said, "Well, honestly, I don't think so, because the development hasn't gone very far, and it'll have to be started again."
Well, I remember Bandersnatch was one of the incredibly hyped titles with those kind of progress diary-style adverts. What happened with that game then?
Well, that was it. That was a game that was supposed to come out on the Spectrum, but didn't because Imagine went bust. And even if it hadn't gone bust, I doubt very much if it would have gone out, it would have taken a long time to develop. Plus, the cost of it would have been ridiculous. It would have cost as much for the game as a bloody computer that's going to run it.
How much of it was made?
Well, the game engine was there. I mean, it's the same game engine I use on Zoom, and I just refined it quite a bit. And there were some really good graphics. There was a giant worm. It all took place in dome cities, and there was a mine underneath the dome cities, and there was a giant worm there. Like there was a film about that, wasn't there? Anyway, and there was a fat man, and they were all line drawings, almost like pixel graphics, but they're beautifully drawn by Ali and Steve and some of the other artists. But they had loads of frames of animation of these giant sprites, and although the render engine could handle it, the memory couldn't. So it ran out of memory almost before we started it. The game itself was never intended to have an ending. It was like you just explored the environment. You met people, and you spoke to them with via speech bubbles, and then they might say something like, "Go and have a look at so and so," or go and talk to so and so. I think maybe you would have gone off looking for certain useful artifacts, but it was basically a never-ending adventure. But it never ended as far as being written was concerned.
Well, Charlie Brooker's taken it to a kind of legendary status with Black Mirror. What did you think about that episode? And kind of,
I haven't seen it actually. I haven't got Netflix, and my son had it, but by the time I got round to saying I'll take a look at it, he got rid of it. He wasn't using it, so he stopped. So I haven't seen it at all. But my son keeps saying to me, "They've written a film about you, John." I said, "Dad, it's not really about me. It's about that time, that Bandersnatch time." And after all, in the movie, it was a young guy, not the old guy that I was in.
Yeah. Well, what I'll have to do is I'll probably have to lend you my login of Netflix, because it is so fantastic, and it kind of takes you back to that time period. They recreate the 80s W.H. Smith and stuff like that.
Really?
Yeah. So it's really good, yeah. And you pick what to play on your cassette player and stuff. I think you'd like it.
What I couldn't understand is why anybody would want to make a film about that, because it's not exactly a national sense of, I'd say, music. Paul McCartney, iconic, but it's a very limited audience, I would have thought, who would be interested in a film like that.
Yeah, I think we had Charlie Brooker on the podcast, and he actually said, all these TV shows take you back to like beautiful paradise places, or Hollywood, or Miami in the 80s, and he wanted to go to dull grey Britain in the 80s. Take people somewhere differently.
Certainly did that.
Yeah. Well, did Imagine ever get visits from like the hardware owners or creators like Clive Sinclair or Alan Sugar or anybody up at the top?
Not that I know. I mean, if they'd come, they would have seen Dave and Mark. So, as far as I know, no. Although maybe, no, I don't think. I'm going to say maybe they might have got in touch with Sinclair because of the add-ons for Bandersnatch, but no, that there was an in-house engineer who designed all that. So, no, as far as I know, no visit from hardware royalty.
Well, how much did you know about the demise of Imagine, and could you see it coming?
Well, no, that's a crazy thing. It came as a complete and utter surprise to me. I think most of the people other people knew about it, that Imagine was nearly on hard times. But I was so busy writing Bandersnatch, I was just in the world of my own. I didn't even think of anything of the fact that 1 month when we got paid in cash, because Dave Rawson and Mark Butler had gone round all the cash machines in Liverpool to draw up enough cash to pay everybody. It wasn't until the official receipt, or the bailiff set turned up, that I realised something not very nice was happening.
Well, there was that legendary documentary where they actually filmed the bailiffs going in. How did your friends and family kind of react to that? Because I can imagine most of the country must have seen that.
I don't think they react. I mean, my mother was concerned was, could I get another job? technical with them, nothing. But I mean, getting a job, that wasn't a problem. But no, I don't think. If anything, people were sort of jealous because I've been on the TV, albeit in a not a very nice way.
Well, I hear you and Dave Lawson did a kind of daring raid on the office to get the source code for Cyclops and Bandersnatch.
Well, it wasn't quite that. It was actually Eugene Evans and I. We wanted to get our development kits out of the office so we can take them to Dave Lawson's house in on the Wirral, so we could carry on writing Bandersnatch. That was the idea. But the bailiffs wouldn't let you take anything out of the office. But Eugene and I managed to grab these big development kits and run to one of the back doors, I think. But somebody spotted us going out, shouting, "Oi, come back!" So we carried on, went through the door. Then there was toilets out. We went in the toilets, went in a cubicle, stood on the toilet seat with the development kit in their hands and waited until they'd gone away, because they came in, they had a look in the toilet, couldn't see us in there, so they went out. And then we ran down the stairs, and Eugene put his kit in his Lotus, and I put my kit in my Porsche, and off we went.
And was it quite a big kit as well?
Well, yeah, it was a Sage 4. It must be. I don't know. It's like 6 inches tall, about a foot wide, and about 18 inches long, and it's got a metal case. It was bloody heavy. It had an old-fashioned hard disk, which was very heavy.
Well, how did you go about forming kind of Denton Design, and was there a sense of there's still work to be done after the collapse of Imagine?
Yeah, well, after the collapse of Imagine, we all went off to all the programming and artists, and we went off to Dave Lawson's house on the Wirral. He had quite a big house, and we carried on working. I mean, in fact, I was put in a room and told to get on with it, and everybody else was told, "Don't disturb John. He's got to finish writing the game." Anyway, everybody got a bit disillusioned about it. We were supposed to be all going off to California to write the game for Atari, and that never came off. So eventually, I think it was Steve Kane and Ian Weather decided enough was enough, and they had the idea of Denton Designs. They wanted me and the two female artists, Karen and Ali, to be their employees. But I said, if you're going to start a company, I want it to be my company as well. I'm not going to be another employee. I want to have some control over my future. So anyway, we all formed it, except for Ian. Ian didn't want that. He wanted to have his own company. He wanted to get his BMW back and all the rest of it. So in the end, he jacked it in before we started. So there's just me, Kenny Everett, Steve Kane, Ali Noble, and Karen Davis from Denton's.
And how much of the Bandersnatch and kind of Mega Games technology got like passed on, or engines?
Well, the Bandersnatch engine was used for Gift from the Gods. It was also used by David Olsen, by Psygnosis, the very early Psygnosis, for Braticus, I think it was Braticus. And it was David Olsen, he had my code, and he knew that it was being used in Gift from the Gods, and he threatened to sue us for plagiarism. And like I said, what do you mean plagiarism? It's my code. But anyway, nothing ever came of it. So there was 2 games, one on the Amiga, one on the Spectrum, using the same engine, my engine.
And was that your favourite project at Denton?
I think it probably is, yeah. I mean, that and Frankie Goes to Hollywood. But, yeah, I think it was my favourite because all that work I put into that Bandersnatch engine wasn't wasted, and it worked really well. All the graphics that like Ali Noble did for Bandersnatch, she did the same sort of thing for the hero in Gift from the Gods.
Well, you mentioned Psygnosis a lot, and you kind of went and did some work with those guys as well. How different was the culture from Imagine?
Well, a lot different. It's a bit saner. And by the time I joined Psygnosis, it was a fairly big company, and it had sort of managers and and gophers and stuff like that. So, but the first time I had a job interview, if you like, with Psygnosis was very soon after it was formed with David Lawson and Ian Hetherington. All they could offer me was write a game and we'll give you some money when it's finished and sold. I thought, I can't do that. I can't live on fresh air. So I ended up working for a company that Steve Kane and Kenny Everett formed, and a few other like Micropros. Just a lot of freelance work, and freelance work with Ocean as well. Eventually, I wrote to Ian Hetherington at Psygnosis and said, oh, give us a job, mate. Anyway, I went and saw him and he said, yeah, you can have a job, John. And that was it. Started working for Psygnosis.
You kind of got into a new world with Psygnosis because it was the CD-ROM world. So you worked on Microcosm, which was one of the early CD-ROM titles. Was that a challenge coming from machine code?
Oh, that was written in machine code as well. The FM Towns that it was developed were written for. It was a PC effectively in FM Towns, and Fujitsu wanted us to use their libraries, if you like, to write the game. We said that's impossible. The game will cruel. You can't do it like that. So we had to do it in machine code. So I said I need a lot of all the documents about the hardware. They turned up with this pile of books about 2 foot high. It took a long time to get your head around it. But when I did, what I first did was to convert my Spectrum and what was also an Atari engine for the FM Towns. And then after that, it was quite easy to write the game. You just had to deal with streaming stuff on the CD and packing images so that they could be streamed quickly enough, because they were only like 150k a second CDs in those days.
And that's fantastic thinking. You use the same engines for the Spectrum, kind of modified in the future for early CD-ROM access.
Well, that's what people do today. I mean, look at Unreal Engine, for example.
Yeah,
that takes it to its extreme. You could get your dog to write a game with Unreal Engine because it's all done for you. But it's not amazing. I suppose the difference was today you could write an engine in C++ or whatever, and it will end up. You can put it on any machine you like, because it will be compiled into the machine code that computer uses. But back then, you couldn't do that. You had to sort of rewrite the particular machine in the particular assembler, which is why I ended up writing Z80, 6502, 68,000 for the Atari and Amiga, and 8086 for Intel 8086 for the FM Towns.
Well, are you still programming these days?
Yeah, I'm retired now, and I don't want to spend the rest of my time sitting staring at the wall or watching the TV. So I've got a little office upstairs, which is where I am now. In fact, at the moment, I'm in the middle of doing a rewrite of Stonkers for Android.
Oh wow!
It'll probably take me a year to do it, because I don't come up here 9 to 5 days a week. I just come up here now and again when the wife elected me, because she doesn't like the idea that I'm doing something that I used to get paid for nothing. So I keep saying, oh no, I'm going to sell the game when I finish it. But I mean, I've also written a game called Spaced Out, but it's not called Spaced Out anymore, but it was a game I wrote for Spectrum way back, and it was never very successful, so you probably never heard of it. But I've done an Android version of that, and I'm just going to see if anybody wants to publish it. If they don't, well, I'll just play it myself.
Have you been keeping an eye on the Spectrum Next stuff at all?
I did to begin with. I think ultimately what put me off was it wasn't really a Spectrum. They'd done so much to it, adding sprites and God knows what else, that it was no longer a Spectrum. It was a sort of a poor man's console, you could almost call it. Anyway, I did play around with it for a while. I started writing Stonkers on that as well, but then there wasn't much documentation around it, and every time they did an upgrade, I needed a new board or whatever, and they kept saying, "Oh, I'll send you a new board, John," but it never arrived. So in the end, I just said, "Oh, sod that. I'll do some Android stuff."
Yeah, it's hard being an early adopter, isn't it? Because you get none of the documentation, you get none of the support that's maybe in a year or so will be there, you know.
Well, I think as well, I don't know if it's still the case, but I heard that the Spectrum Next wasn't going to go out until a general release. It wasn't going to be stuck in shops that the general public can buy. It was just going to be for the people that sponsor the project.
Yeah, I think that's the case, and then they're going to try and see if they can get it out into the public.
Yeah, because well, I thought, well, if I write a game for it, only 10 people are going to see it or play it, and I can't make any money out of it. The idea was to be, to do it for the fun of it, sort of thing. But I mean, I did it for the fun of it for like 35 years. I don't want to do it for the fun of it anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's been fantastic talking to you, John. Thanks for coming on this week.
It's fantastic that I haven't had to say, I can't remember that, because I really thought I would. But I suppose it all comes flooding back when people like you, start talking to me about all those times, all that time ago, all the memories flood back. And it was a great time, a great time.